It's Friday, March 27th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and today we got another on an ongoing series of videos regarding the tragic loss of the B-17 from the Collings Foundation 909 back in October of last year in Bradley Field, Connecticut. Just yesterday it was announced that the FAA has revoked the Living History Flying Experience Exemption for the entire Collings Foundation fleet of vintage World War II and other aircraft based on evidence that they've found so far in the crash of the B-17 909. This is the fifth in a series of videos on this particular crash. Be sure and hit like and subscribe, and so you can have access to the playlist and get updated as these updates come out. I've got a playlist of 5 of these videos now regarding just this one specific incident. From the Hartford Courant newspaper, that's done a great job of keeping us updated on this, written by David Owens. The headline is, "The FAA says the owner of a World War II bomber involved in the deadly Bradley crash did not take safety seriously and can no longer carry passengers." That's the exemption I'm talking about, has been denied. In a decision released Wednesday, not yesterday, but Wednesday, Robert C. Carty, the FAA's Deputy Executive Director of Flight Service Standards, found that there were problems with 2 of the aircraft's 4 engines and that the Collings Foundation did not follow the requirements of its permission to operate the aircraft and carry passengers and lacked a safety culture when operating the B-17G. The FAA decision revokes the permission Collings had to obtain flights for pay and denies the organization's request to extend that permission for the 10 aircraft it owns, including the B-17, it obtained to replace the one that crashed at Bradley. Investigators say that the crew chief aboard the flight that crashed had not been trained for his role and told FAA investigators that he was unaware of basic information concerning operations. Instead, he received on-the-job training. Remember, up in the cockpit there was a crew of 3. Mac was in the left seat, the highest time pilot of B-17s, 75 years old. In the right seat was a 71-year-old co-pilot, and then in the middle was a flight engineer / crew chief helping out with the flight. The 2 pilots perished. The crew chief or flight engineer in the middle survived. And he is key to this investigation. Collings did not comply with its own safety management system. The crew chief was not aware a safety and risk management program existed. This is part of their exemption, is to follow and carry out the paperwork with a safety management system. It's basically a risk assessment matrix that you're supposed to comply with as part of this exemption. The crew chief was not aware of a safety and risk management program existed, and Collings failed to maintain and apply on a continuous basis a safety and risk management program that met or exceeded FAA policy. The FAA found notable maintenance discrepancies existed with the B-17G. An inspection of the bomber's engine found problems significant enough to cause the FAA to question whether the engines were inspected adequately and in accordance with applicable maintenance requirements. Specifically, the inspection found that magneto and ignition failures existed in the aircraft's number 4 engine. Magnetos, which we know what they are on this channel, engine-driven electrical generators that produce a voltage to fire the engine spark plugs, more on that in a minute, were not functioning properly. An attempt to jury-rig one had left it inoperative, according to the report. A second magneto on the number 4 engine, when tested, produced a weak or no spark to 4 of the 9 cylinders it was supposed to fire. Inspectors also found that all spark plugs required cleaning and that all of the electrode gaps were out of tolerance. Further engine inspection indicated signs of detonation and associated damage. An inspection of the number 3 engine, remember the engines are numbered 1 to 4 left to right on a multi-engine aircraft, so we're talking 2 engine problems on one side of the aircraft, number 3 and number 4. An inspection of the number 3 engine showed all spark plug electrode gaps were out of tolerance, fouled, and revealed various signs of detonation. Inspection of the engine also revealed problems with the cylinders, according to the report. Detonation is a form of misfiring, firing before it should be firing. As a result of these findings and other information, the FAA questioned whether the engines were inspected adequately and in accordance with maintenance requirements. So the FAA doesn't act until it has solid evidence to back up their claim. In this case, they've got the evidence from the engines at this point, but there's further evidence that's not being revealed yet and will not be known completely until the final NTSB report is out, probably still a year away yet on this accident. So what we know so far is that one of the magnetos on number 4 engine was wet with moisture. The moisture from the night before had basically fouled out the number 4 magneto, and they were in there with an air bottle trying to blow out or dry out that number 4 engine magneto. I don't know if it was the left one or the right one. Remember, on airplane engines, each engine has 2 sets of magnetos that fire 2 cylinders per spark plug, and the engine can operate on 1 magneto on 1 set of spark plugs, so it will lose a little bit of power and possibly lead to detonation. Now it looks like we have problems with 2 engines, number 3 and number 4. What we need to know, and what's going to be hard to find out because we don't have cockpit voice recorders, and this is why the flight engineer in the middle seat is key to the investigation based on how much he can recall from the accident, because when you get hit that hard, it's that memory may be jarred or missing important parts of data. What was the crew doing as a crew? How was the crew reacting to the emergency? How was their crew resource management? Were they working effectively together as a crew? Were they shutting down the correct engines? These are some of the things that we need to get more information about before we can find out solidly what happened to the 909. This sounds to me like something more than just a mechanical failure. Something failed in crew management and or at least energy management of this aircraft, because a B-17, even when down to just 2 engines, should be able to stagger around the pattern and come back and land safely. This crew somehow ran out of energy, altitude, and ideas 1,000 feet short of the runway, crashing into the ILS antennas. And on further inspection of the aircraft and the propellers, it looks like number 4 propeller was fully feathered and number 3 propeller was partially feathered. So what was the crew doing during this emergency? A prop is normally feathered following an engine failure to minimize aerodynamic drag. Remember, it's the living history flight exemption that allows these historic aircraft operators to charge fees to go ride in these airplanes, and these fees go a long way towards the preservation and continued operation of the aircraft, and allow these museums to basically be flying museums and go tour around the country and bring these aircraft to your community so that you can come down to the local airport and see them. By not being able to charge for rides, that's going to put a serious crimp in these operators' budgets, and they're going to have to think up of another way to help fund this program if they want to keep it going without selling rides. Again, this only applies to the Collings Foundation at this time. Other warbird operators are still allowed to operate under the exemption. So as we get more information on this, we'll keep you posted. Thanks again for your support and your support on Patreon to keep this channel going. See you here.